Hello, fish family and plant family. Welcome back to my channel. This is Dead Fred 821 here, and we have reached the end of our Pothos experiment. That does not mean that any of these plants are going to be thrown out or that they're dead or that this is a failure. This is the end of the Pothos experiment because we have come to conclusions. First, let's explain the Pothos experiment. We had three plants that were essentially trimmings or clippings from what we now know as Audrey 2. These clippings were done many months before the clippings were found because they were in a bag that was meant to be thrown in the trash, and it was underneath one of these chairs here in the living room. I just so happened to be cleaning up, and I pulled out the bag, and I see I see three lines in there. Two lines that were about 12 feet long, and a third, two lines that were about 18 feet long, and one that was about 12 feet long. So what I did was I split them up into I split those three into 6-foot length sections, which means I ended up with two sections or two groups of three that were 6 feet long, and one group of two that was about 6 feet long. And I named them Experiment 1, Experiment 2, and Experiment 3. And you might be looking at these and thinking that this is Experiment 1 and Experiment 2. Not anymore. This is Kernigan and this is Regina. And Kernigan and Regina are not doing too well, but they're doing much better than they were earlier this week. By the way, this is Friday, December 18th. Technically Saturday, December 19th, because it's after midnight. But, semantics. Anyway. Let's talk about what we have learned during this experiment. First of all, this is Pothos, also known as the devil's ivy. And it's called the devil's ivy because of the fact that it's difficult to actually kill. Aside from herbicides, there are a few things that will kill this plant. Cold temperatures, too much water, not enough sun, and too much sun. Now let me explain too much sun. Too much sun is going to occur not when you put it outdoors, because it's a plant that, it's a plant. It's meant to be outdoors. When it gets too much sun in a temperature that's too low for it, it will create some type of nutrient deficiency in it. Don't ask me the science behind it. Go Google it. There is such a thing as giving this plant too much sun. And then, of course, just like any other plant, having too little sun. Now, this plant will survive in low sunlight, but it doesn't mean that it will thrive. That's key. That's something that you need to understand. Now, what I actually did, I took two 6-foot sections. Well, first, the 6-foot section with only two vines in it, I put that in the big pot that the Pothos plant originally came out of, and I called that the winter garden because I planted it with other plants. Unfortunately, those other plants have different watering requirements than a Pothos, but we'll get to that. Right now our focus is on Kernigan and Regina. Okay, so with these two bundles of three, what I had done was I literally placed their bases inside of these pots. With only, and now mind you, I did that after I pruned all the leaves off of them. Now, where I really messed up with that was putting a top layer or dry cap on top of all of these. That old dead dirt that was originally in the winter garden pot, it wouldn't hold water. It was dead earth because it was neglected earth. There was no nutrients. There was no ability in it. So what happens with that dry cap that was sitting up on top here, I would water the plant, and because the top was so dry, I assumed that it needed more water, or it needed water faster than it needed water. I was watering these once a week, which apparently was too much, because when I got down past that dry layer and started looking at the earth that's underneath that dry layer, it was soaked. And I mean soaked. Now, what's bad about that is that eventually fungus gnats came. Now we'll get to that, but before the fungus gnats came, I learned that all those leaves that I pruned off are not going to grow back. It is possible for them to grow back, but it's highly unlikely. See what the pothos plant does, and this is why it's called devil's ivy. It's a survivor. When it knows it's not getting any nutrition, what it'll do is it'll bolt. It will drop its leaves to save energy from those leaves and literally try to reach the next source of nutrition. So it'll go over this way and then send out a root and this way and send out a root that way and try to find some nutrition. Once it starts finding new nutrition, it will then start growing leaves, and then it'll then start growing thicker and bigger, etc. Now, the amazing thing about these nodes on the plant, and this is how you can tell the bottom of the plant from the top of the plant, because on the nodes, leaves grow from the top and roots grow from the bottom. That's key. That's something that you should know. It doesn't really hold any bearing on this experiment because getting back to what we had done, or what we had done inside the Pothos experiment, once the fungus gnats came, it was war. It was war. I tried to let things dry out, and I thought they were drying out, but again, I had that dry cap up on top of the nutritious earth. So I had the dead earth on top of the nutritious earth, and every time I watered these plants, I thought that maybe they weren't watered enough. And as you can see, this one has an overflow saucer or bowl underneath it, but this one has a normal bowl underneath it. When I removed this pot from this bowl, there was standing water inside of it. These poor plants have been, some people would say that they had wet feet. That's not good. That is not good. When that water has no nutritional value to it, all it's doing is allowing the plant to be broken down and softened up by the water. Pretty much what happens when you create a culture of infusoria. But I decided, since these are not going to regrow any leaves, and one of these plants, I believe it was this one, had started growing one leaf on the end, I'm like, well, you know what? Let me go ahead and bury the whole plant. Now stop. That's where I messed up. That is the second place where I messed up. The first place I messed up was the overwatering. But had I known what I know now, I would have cut each of these lines into sections that had only 3 nodes on them. And I would have gone out of my way to try to bury 1 or 2 of those nodes. And I would probably have 20 or 30 different plants. You know, I'd probably have a whole bunch of plants in this pot and a whole bunch of plants in that pot, which the pot would be able to handle. Unfortunately, I did not know that. Now, I'm keeping it real with you folks. I'm going to shoot straight with you because I don't want you to make the same mistake that I made. Where I'm at right now is at a place that I am able to recover, although it is highly likely that 1 plant in each of these pots will die. Each of these pots have 3 plants. Yeah? Okay. Each of these pots have 3 plants. This plant and this plant will likely die. Likely. Not definitively though. But after noticing that there was no growth and there was further wilting, I decided to stop watering altogether because these were clear signs of the fact that they were overwatering. So what I did was I decided to repot them. And again, had I known, I would have cut them into 3 node sections. Instead, what I did was I buried all of those nodes, hoping that they would grow roots. Now, this is possible. This can be done. Not when you're trying to fight fungus gnats and you're overwatering the plant, though. I also used a product called Mosquito Bits, which contains a bacteria called BTI. I mixed it in with the potting soil. This did help get rid of the fungus gnat larva. Eventually, the adult fungus gnats started to disappear, and once I stopped seeing those fungus gnats, I decided to remove a top layer of soil and put a sand cap on here. Now, Kernigan and Regina have been removed from the Pothos experiment because right now they are in intensive care. The first thing that needs to happen, and this might sound backwards, is that they need to dry out completely. Their soil needs to completely dry out before I add any more moisture to it. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to give these, it's been a week since these have been watered. We're going to give them at least another week. So these are not going to get watered until Christmas. And when they do, I'll be probing the earth to make sure that it's dry. And probably start with taking out these chopsticks, because right now we really don't need them. But if I take out these chopsticks after Christmas and there's still moisture on the chopsticks, they're not going to get watered. And we'll take it from there. But this will be a new series, starting with Kernigan and Regina. And we will be following their intensive care and hoping that we can get them to recover. Now, that's all that I got for you today, or this evening rather. As always, I'd like to ask you folks that if you know anybody suffering with any form of mental illness, that you reach out to them. You never know what difference that could make. It could save their life, it could save your life, or it could save the life of others. And always remember, folks, winners aren't people that never fail. They're people that never quit. So don't you dare quit. Don't you dare give up. You see, I'm not quitting or giving up on these lovely queens here. So don't you give up on yourself. Thank you for joining me today. This is Dead Fred 821. Peace. I'm out of here.